We would like to invite General Thompson and Elon Musk to the stage. Round of applause.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We got about 30 minutes with Elon here. I love the soundtrack that we're listening to throughout the day. We've got the theme, or the soundtrack to The Martian, the soundtrack to Interstellar, even the soundtrack to the Stranger Things. So hopefully that has lightened the mood a little, and hopefully you all have had the opportunity to enjoy the expo, some of the public pitches, and some of the panel sessions that have occurred throughout the day. Our guest today needs no introduction. In the Forbes innovation list for 2019, he was co-number one on that list with Mr. Jeff Bezos, and if you care to comment on that later, you'll have the opportunity. But I will remain silent on that. He's obviously the founder of a few companies you may all be familiar with, like Tesla Motors and SpaceX. He's also spent time on the board of a nonprofit, OpenAI, and sponsored innovative competitions like the Hyperloop Initiative. Elon, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll just dive right in unless anybody has any objections to that. I just have some questions. We're going to be talking about primarily innovation, but interspersed amongst some of our questions on innovation will be some questions on leadership, some questions on culture, especially in the small business growing to a large business kind of environment. And then I myself never got these questions until 5 years ago, but I may throw you a couple work-life balance questions,
Sure.
Quality of life questions. So without further ado, Elon, a critical question that all businesses face when tackling challenges during product development is, do we invest the time and the resources to do this work internally, or do we contract it out and have an external partner do it with us? Can you talk to the audience a little bit about what kind of decision process you go through, whether you're deciding to do it in one of your companies or contract it out to somebody else?
Well, in the beginning, we try to contract most things out. Both at Tesla and SpaceX, we started off with most things contracted out. And that didn't succeed. So we insourced more and more over time. In space particularly, the supply chain is not great. ITAR restricts you to really working with U.S. companies, or it's very difficult to work with non-U.S. companies because space rockets are a weapons technology. So you have a very limited set of suppliers. And to the degree that you have legacy parts, you inherit the legacy costs and limitations. And so that required us to insource most of the rocket. There's probably only less than 10% of the rocket is coming from the space supply chain at this point. Some automotive supply chain is better. Consumer electronics is a lot better. Wherever there's a lot of competition, the supply chain is better. So it really depends on the part. But it's important to bear in mind that legacy components mean legacy cost limitations. If you want to have something revolutionary, you can't do catalog engineering.
Yeah.
Catalog engineering is not, it's limited, limited ingredients.
So the legacy industrial base isn't able to adapt fast enough to what you're trying to do, so you insource it. Are there any special techniques or cultural aspects of that insourcing that you found to be particularly beneficial in Tesla or SpaceX?
Well, I really think it's just like if you want to advance technology, you've got to recruit the world's best engineers and then create an environment which enables them to be as innovative as possible. So the reward structure, you need to really reward and encourage innovation, and punish lack of innovation. So it's got to be both. It's just a stick and carrot. Well, ideally more carrot than stick. That's my new philosophy. More carrot, less stick. I say yes. So the thing is that in a lot of companies, you have a risk-reward asymmetry where bold moves are, if they go wrong, are punished. But sort of keeping your head down is not punished. Mm-hmm. That's not good. That will result in a very conservative outcome. So it has to be a requirement that there is significant advancement, and simply the lack of doing something significant is bad.
Yeah.
Big companies just become really conservative over time, and really the government is a company in the limit. So the government is the biggest company. Yeah.
So we have some big companies in the audience, but we have a lot of small businesses in the audience.
Right.
So not part of the, if you will, the legacy supply chain for rockets or whatever other innovation a company that you are associated with might be producing. Is there some advice or counsel that you could give to some of these small businesses about how to market to growing space partnerships like SpaceX or other companies that might be willing to admit them to the supply chain if they don't have that old think or that old process mentality?
Well, for SpaceX or Tesla, I mean, if somebody's got a component that's better than what we're making internally, we would love to buy that, for sure. We would just reallocate the resources that we're working on that component to do something else. So, like for example, on Falcon 9, we used to build the landing legs, the big carbon fiber landing legs that fold out ourselves, and then we contracted it out to All American Racing. And they used to normally do it like racing cars. Mm-hmm. They did a great job. They were doing better than us. So we handed the building legs to them and worked on other things. Okay. So this is by no means like it would be completely insane for us to want to continue to make a part ourselves internally that is inferior to a part that is available externally. That would be madness. So we'd love to outsource more. It'd be great. Yeah.
So that's a pretty high bar, but if you do it better than SpaceX, then they'd like to talk to you, okay? Elon, given your extensive experience in the nonprofit arena with companies like OpenAI that I mentioned in the introduction, and your ability to tap into the academic environment, that cutting-edge innovation in our environment with things like the Hyperloop competition, are there smart ways for the folks in the audience, this community of space professionals, to be engaging with different sources of innovation in the ecosystem? How do we better cultivate those sources of innovation so that we can take advantage of them in our nation's space capabilities?
Okay, well, I wouldn't say I'm like an expert in nonprofits, but OpenAI was really intended to mitigate the risk of artificial general intelligence. I hope that that's what it does. There's some chance it may amplify the risk, but hopefully it diminishes the risk. And I have a sort of foundation that gives away, money mostly anonymously. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert on this. What I'm mostly trying to do is figure out the set of actions that increase the probability that the future is good, and take those actions.
Okay.
Aspirationally, please.
Okay. So is there, are there techniques that you personally use to identify sources of information? I mean, is it just reading or seeing what's out there? Do you have the continuous market research going on in your companies or in your private life about, hey, what's out there that I should be sponsoring or taking advantage of to make things better than they are?
I do zero market research whatsoever.
Okay.
We don't even have a marketing department, really. Or advertising, or any. It's just like what it would be a great car or a great rocket. So it's like I'm trying to think of like what is the platonic ideal of, say, the perfect rocket or car. What characteristics would it have, and then make that, and then I find that if you do that, people want to buy it.
Okay.
And that's it. And like we're going to come out with the Tesla pickup truck, or we call it a Cybertruck. I mean, it looks like an armored personnel carrier from the future. Yeah, it's like it'll look like a normal truck. People might not like it. It might not. I like it.
Sounds like a couple other people do too.
It's gonna look like a cable from a movie set. When it goes down the road, you're like, whoa, what is that thing? It's literally bulletproof.
Okay. I look forward to seeing it and perhaps driving it at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think like if I can elaborate on that, like a lot of times I think people try to make products that they think others would love, but they don't love them themselves. And if you don't love the product, you should not expect that others will. Like yeah. I mean, you know your own heart, and if it's compelling to you, it will be compelling to others.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, from a leadership perspective, obviously, you started as a leader of a small business. You grew a number of small businesses into large businesses. So, from your early days at Zip2 and PayPal, leading very, very small teams of developers, sometimes doing a lot of the development yourself, hands-on, today as you lead very large companies like Tesla Motors and SpaceX. Has your leadership approach changed at all, or is managing those small teams, do you try and keep that culture and your leadership style the same throughout?
Well, it definitely has to evolve as companies get bigger. I mean, Tesla's around 45,000 people, and SpaceX is almost 7,000 people. When a company's little, then your skill as a sort of like an individual engineer can make a very big difference. When a company is large, you have to kind of teach a lot of people to do it. You have to be a force multiplier, as opposed to like if you have a little band, like if you're like a dozen swordsmen or something, and you're an ace swordsman. Okay, great. That's going to make a difference in a little battle, but not if you was 12,000. Yeah. Like you can't like run along the entire battle line. It doesn't work. So you have to try to teach people en masse different approaches, and just make sure that that you reward the right behavior. That the reward structure is incenting the right behavior. This is incredibly important. Economics 101, whatever you incent is likely to happen. In fact, it would be bizarre if it didn't. So statistically speaking, it will definitely be what happens. So the incentive structure, reward and punishment must be sensible. And this sounds very obvious, but in most organizations, the true reward and punishment is not sensible, and then people are puzzled why they do not get the outcome that they want. It's because the reward structure isn't right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So as businesses grow, as your businesses have grown, and it becomes less and less about the engineer talking to the program manager one-on-one in a very small team environment, and it becomes conversations between different teams in your enterprise, much larger groups of people. In many organizations, there's a tendency that seams will develop, and
Yes.
leaders have to manage those seams. Or insist that their teams manage those seams. How have you managed the seams in the large businesses that you manage currently?
No, I think that's a great point that you're making in the question. In any given product, you can see the organizational errors manifest themselves in the errors in the product. So you can see like and I see this in our own products. It's like for example, we've got like a top cover of the battery, and we've got a bottom cover on the car. Like, okay, that's an example of an organizational error. We should only have one cover. You don't need a box in a box. But there's the battery team and the body and chassis team, and so they both made a cover. You'll see sort of flanges and joints and various things that don't make sense, or where things are doubled up, and where you have subsystem optimization instead of overall system optimization. So to counteract that, which is not easy, I actually insist that teams step on each other's toes. So if like in the rocket, the propulsion team, the engine team, has to go partway into the airframe, and the airframe team has to go partway into the engine. It's hard to get people to do that, and so but essentially they have to basically offend other people in the company, but not be offended themselves. Okay. So this is very important. And one of the things that I try to propagate is that everyone should be chief engineer. Like, meaning everyone should have at least a sort of cursory understanding of the whole rocket or the whole car, even though they may have deep expertise in one arena. Then they'll be able to tell if they're optimizing for the product as a whole. Mm-hmm. So generally, I find like you can summarize the key characteristics of each discipline. You can simplify it down to a few principles. There's like Richard Feynman used to say that you really know your subject if you can explain it to a smart 10-year-old. But if you try to sort of disguise your expertise in obscure language, then maybe you don't understand what you're talking about. Like for example, like when say a rocket's coming back from orbit, you have like center of pressure and center of mass, and it effectively it all sounds very complicated, but basically you just have a seesaw. So if the things of approximately equal density, it's just going to be, if you put mass on one side, it's going to tip that way. If you put mass on the other side, it's going to tip the other way. And think of it just like a seesaw. And then like we'll see the mass distribution either makes sense or doesn't make sense, or the flaps are too big on one side or the other. There's, yeah. Yeah. I think of other examples, but anyway, I think a good principle is that everyone should try to have a broad understanding of the product as a whole. So, and that's very important. It makes a big difference.
So other than the culture of broad understanding amongst your teams and the culture of don't worry too much about offending people on other teams,
Yeah.
to make those difficult kind of discussions, to not travel risk downstream and identify issues early. Are there other aspects, especially in growing your small businesses into large businesses, that have been really important from a culture perspective for either you and your leadership team or for your entire workforce?
I can't say I'm not sure I really view myself as some great expert on leadership, to be frank. I mean, I think we're doing okay, but we just seem to make a lot of mistakes, just from what I can see. I try to use the tools of physics as much as possible. When I was growing up, I was actually thinking I was have a career in physics at Calif or something like that.
Okay.
I don't think I'd be doing this, to be totally frank.
Well, coming from a culture that values leadership, my position is that you don't achieve results, and certainly you have achieved results unless you have that kind of leadership skill. So don't sell yourself short, is what I'm saying.
That's true. There's plenty of others doing that.
All right. So with that, let's go ahead.
I was gonna say, so one of the things in physics is you should always assume that you're some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong. This is a very important frame of mind. People tend to assume that they're right, and they must prove that they're right. You're definitely wrong to some degree. The question is, how wrong, and can you be less wrong tomorrow? This is a very important principle.
Okay, so instead of leadership lessons from Abraham Lincoln or somebody else, leadership lessons from the world of physics.
Yes, the thought constructs of physics can be applied broadly. They're right there. They're amazing. We've figured out all these counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics and general relativity. So these are great tools. You can just read about them and use them. Great.
Okay. All right. We'll have a textbook sale later after our session, or for those of you who are in the audience right now, just hit Khan Academy up. Lots of good stuff on there on physics. Okay, so Elon, let's move on a little bit to work-life balance. Do you have a deliberate approach to how you balance your work and the rest of your life? Or do you just kind of have a sense of, hey, I am focusing way too much on work right now, I need a break, or I need to go do something different?
Well, I everyone's got their own point of view on this, but it's obviously a life decision. In my case, I actually want to get the most amount done possible, but if you don't take some breaks, then your sort of amount that you get done is less. So the reason I would take breaks is in order to get more done, basically. Well, it's not everyone's decision, though. But as a friend of mine was talking to a friend of mine this weekend, and he said, when's the last time you had a vacation where you didn't do work for a week? And I was like, well, that would be like year 2000, when I had malaria. Stuck in the hospital and didn't have the internet. So maybe I should take another break, Yeah. But I think it's probably, I would not recommend running two companies. This does not make for the most fun, I should say.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. So about a year ago, you and I had a conversation on a Saturday morning, and the thing that I remember from the Saturday morning telephone conversation was we spent about the first 15 or 20 minutes talking about the workouts that we had just had on that Saturday morning. Would you care to tell the audience a little bit about how you stay in shape?
Oh, I don't think I'm in good brain shape, to be honest. But you mean like physically?
Yeah. The mentally in shape question is next.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think I'm in super great shape, but I basically just like lift weights and run on a treadmill, and that's like the one time that I really watch television is like running for 15 to 20 minutes on a treadmill. And that's it.
Okay. Well, along those lines, what are you watching on television when you're running?
I just finished watching Space Jam. It's pretty good.
Okay. I think we have a request for a Space Jam soundtrack later this afternoon. Okay, gotcha. How about, I know you're a huge reader, but from a lifelong learning perspective, constantly trying to add to your toolkit so that you're, a better leader, a better CEO. Are there recommendations that you have for the audience about those kinds of things that you do to keep yourself mentally sharp?
Well, I read a lot less these days than I used to. When I was a kid, I was read all the time. I mean, I mostly subscribe to scientific periodicals, like the daily news. I find to be a lot of noise and just very negative. So I generally try to not read the daily news all that much, because generally newspapers seem to be trying to answer the question, what is the worst thing that happened on Earth today? It's big, okay? There's a lot of people. Something terrible happened every single day, guaranteed. It was just a big plan. Also, something great happened, but they don't answer that question. So that's the daily news just tends to make one miserable. But I think like the science and technology periodicals are quite interesting, and usually, if there's some new discovery, it'll be in there. I find Twitter enlightening at times. You learn a bit there, and talking to smart people all the time is very helpful, because that can be a distillation of interesting things that are going on. Certainly like try to ask people like for the car, like, what are we doing wrong? What can we fix? What can we make better? And they usually just want to tell me, oh, it's great, I love it. I'm like, but sure, I understand, but what's wrong with it? And like, what can we make better? This is this theory of like, how do we be less wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like they always want to tell me the good stuff. I'm like, that's cool, but first tell me the bad stuff. That's very important.
Okay.
Yeah, even the small bad things that we can make better.
Okay, so we have a similar culture in Air Force Acquisition, talking to our operators about, well, that's great that you love it, but tell us what part don't you like, right?
Yeah.
So, so this domain, the space domain, this ecosystem that's represented today, one of the challenges that it faces every day, and would face every day even if the STEM production system across the United States or across the free world was perfect, is a strategic competition for talent. Are there techniques that, as you grow from a small business to a large business, that you need to change in terms of how you reach out and find that talent in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like the things that, if you want to get great engineering talent, then the work itself has to be exciting. The best engineers want to work on the most innovative things. And then as you add great engineers to the company, they will in turn recruit other great engineers talents of all kinds. So it's very important that the thing they're working on is intrinsically interesting, and generally that is a high energy environment. If the work is intrinsically interesting and they're making progress, then you just sort of attract more and more great engineers. When you stop doing really interesting things, then they leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they're pretty straightforward. You also want to make sure you've got a recruiting function that is very good, and that if somebody great wants to join the company, that they actually get an interview. And this is actually one of my big worries, is like, if Nikola Tesla was alive today, could he get an interview? And if not, we're doing something wrong. And like, I'm not totally sure he would get an interview. And we're like, so if one of the most brilliant engineers that ever lived could maybe not get an interview, we should fix that and make sure we're not like barring the doors from talent. Or that we're looking at the right things. Like, generally look for things that are like evidence of exceptional ability. I don't care if somebody graduated from college or high school or whatever. What evidence of exceptional ability? Just give me 3 bullet points, evidence of exceptional ability. Graduating from college is not, that's okay.
Yeah.
But, did they build some really impressive device, win some really tough competition, come up with some great idea, solve some really tough problem? It's like, what did they do that just was like clear evidence of exceptional ability? It's not necessarily a 4.0 GPA. That's considered to be a contraindicator. Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Clear evidence of exceptional ability. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. So Elon, I want to give you the last minute or so for Elon to be Elon, right?
Okay.
So you have here, which is Air Force Space Pitch Day. You have in the audience small businesses developing new and innovative capabilities for the space domain. You have Air Force Space Command operators, Air Force space acquisition folks. You have congressional staffers. You have some media. You've got experts in the Valley in the audience. What is the one thing or 2 things that you want to tell them all about Air Force Space Pitch Day and how it is to be successfully growing a small business to a large business?
Okay, well, I mean, to be frank, I don't think there's like, it's intrinsically good to grow a small business to a large business. Sometimes a small business should be a small business. Sometimes businesses shouldn't exist. Sure, it's true. So like, and business like a company is a group of people collected together for a purpose, which is to create a compelling product or service. And if that product or service is not compelling, the company shouldn't exist. But that's sometimes people forget. It's the point is to create a great product or service. And then if you're just one person, it's hard to do that. You need often more than one person. So it's not about growing a business for the sake of growing a business. You have to say, like, what is this important problem that you're trying to solve that really matters? And then go try to solve that. With respect to space, I think there's really just one problem. One problem primarily, which is a fully and rapidly reusable rocket, orbital rocket. This is the holy grail. With SpaceX, we've made some progress in this direction with the reuse of the booster and the fairing, but it's absolutely profound to have a reusable rocket, as it would be to have, as it is to have reusable transport in all other domains. Bicycles, aircraft, cars, horses are all reusable. So, if you look at the cost comparison, something like a Pilatus PC-12 single-engine turboprop has a payload of about 1 ton and costs $5 million. A 747 has a payload of over 100 tons, and you can lease it for a flight from San Francisco to Sydney and back for $500,000. So that is a 1,000-fold difference in cost per ton of transport. And actually, the Pilatus can't reach Australia, so wouldn't even get there. So what I'm trying to say is like a small, a giant reusable craft costs a small expendable craft. It stands to reason if you just need to refuel something, it's a heck of a lot easier than building the whole vehicle. So, you know, when I say like there's like a lot of rocket startups, and I think this is one thing they have to solve: reusability. That's it. You know, for our Starship program, which is obviously pretty ambitious, the cost of fuel and oxygen, and it's hydrogen pressurized, it doesn't use helium, which is very expensive, is about $900,000 per flight. So if the thing is fully reusable, it's about $900,000 of propellant per flight for something with around 150 tons to at least 100 tons, but probably over time 150 tons capability. And even if you consider other operational costs, maybe it'll be like $2 million a flight, or the marginal cost of flight. So this is much less than even a tiny rocket. And so it's the thing that needs to be made. But a small reusable rocket would still be useful. But just a small, like it's not like there are only 747s. There are a lot of things in the aircraft of all sizes, but they're all reusable. And if you start an aircraft company where hey, we're a single-use aircraft company, yes, people would say, well, that's pretty funny. And you know, the plus side is that you take off with no landing gear, and and you run until your tanks are dry, so you have extra range. Great. And then you drop the cargo out with a parachute and the plane crashes. And that's how rockets work. It's crazy. This is very, very important.
Well, Elon, on behalf of Secretary Barrett, Dr. Roper, and myself, and the entire Air Force Acquisition team, thank you for joining us here today. Everybody, Elon Musk.
Thank you.